This episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast is brought to you by the fine gentlemen of Bird Campbell, PA. Bird Campbell means business. Hello, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 121 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. This is our July edition. It is Thursday, July 26th, 2018. I am your host, Sam Klein. I'm going to talk about my life shortly, but before I do that, I want to bring in my co-hosts. So first of all, of course, we have Donald Wine, who's in Washington, D.C. Donald, it's been a minute since I saw you, 2 weeks ago at the All-Star game? How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. And it's funny, you saw me in D.C., and I am not in D.C. right now. I am calling in right now for you guys from High West Distillery in Park City, Utah. Why am I in Utah? Well, me and my buddy here from D.C., we flew out here to hang out for the day before driving up to Montana for a good friend's wedding tomorrow. So I am on the road. I have a nice drink in my hand, and I'm feeling great about the basketball season.
I love it. I love it. And our other host, of course, is Jason Evans in Atlanta. Jason, hello.
Hey, and I'm not going to say anything because I want you to talk about where you are. It is way more interesting what's happened to Sam than anything going on with me right now.
Yeah, where are you, Sam?
Yeah, so well, I did say I was with Donald in Washington a couple weeks ago. We met up at the Home Run Derby. I also got to go to the All-Star game as Donald did the next night. It was a lot of fun. I recommend if you are a baseball fan and have the opportunity, of course, to attend either of those events in your life, you absolutely should take advantage. But now I am no longer in DC. I am moved into my apartment here in Durham, the home of the Blue Devils, the Bull City. So I am at Duke now, and orientation for NBA class starts next week. So I am gearing up to be back in school, to be back at Duke, and ready to ready to be, here in person for football and for basketball seasons for the next 2 years. So I'm really psyched. I've gotten to meet a lot of my classmates, a couple of the faculty members here. So it's gonna be really cool. I'm very excited. Very excited to be back in Durham and back at Duke. There's so much cool new stuff that opens here. It seems like every time I come back, and I have spent the last few days sort of rediscovering Durham or discovering all the new great things that are going on here. So if you haven't been back to Durham, unless it was very recently, man, you don't know how much things are changing here. So much going on in Durham. I'm excited to be here, but we have a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. It's been
Sam. Before we continue, what
Yes.
you have to do, I'm giving you your first bit of homework.
Okay.
As business,
I've actually
business
had
school.
I've actually already had to do some homework, but homework from
so
you.
I'm giving
Let's
you
hear
your
it.
second bit of homework. Your homework is to send a picture to Jason and I of the couch that we can sleep on when we come down to visit you in Durham.
Oh, I bought a lovely queen sleeper sofa. So
I can't wait.
Not only can you both come, but there's actually room for both of you on the couch if you're into cuddling.
There we go.
So I will leave that decision to the two of you, and if not, there's plenty of floor space for an air mattress. So yes, I will do that.
Awesome.
I love you guys. I love you guys. I'm not cuddling with either one of you. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
That's not going to happen.
All right. Hey,
Jason's not a cuddler, ladies and gentlemen.
You do you. Anyway, we've got a ton of content today because it's been a little bit since our last show. The last time I was with you guys was 2 months ago because I missed our NBA draft wrap up show because I was out and about and couldn't get online that week. But so I did listen in though. I listened to the whole episode. I really loved it. I appreciated having Sidhu on in my place. I was honored to get his analysis of the draft. And we are actually going to circle back and talk a little bit about some of those NBA guys. But the highlight of the show this week is an interview we did a few days ago with Stephen Pagliuca. Duke fans have probably heard his name in a few different places. So Stephen graduated from Duke in 1977. He played briefly on the basketball team while he was here at Duke. He then began a successful career in private equity investing, which some steps down the road led him to be part of the ownership group of the Boston Celtics. He's been in that role since 2002, and under his leadership, the Celtics they won the 2008 NBA Finals, and of course, we know that his squad is poised to be one of the favorites this year in the Eastern Conference, if not the favorite in the Eastern Conference. And on top of all of that, Duke fans probably remember two of his sons, Joe and Nick, who played at Duke on the basketball team. Joe, of course, graduated in 2007. Nick only just last year, and both of those guys got to play in Final Fours. So they had a lot of success here in Durham. But I want to get to our interview with Steven, and then when we're done, we'll go ahead and sort of wrap up our thoughts on that. And then after that, we're going to get into the men's basketball non-conference schedule that Duke put out just today. And then we're going to go around the horn and kind of highlight some of the NBA players that have, recent Blue Devils who are in the NBA, who've had developments over the summer that we just want to check in with. So a lot of topics this week. We won't touch on the upcoming games in Canada, the exhibition games that the Blue Devils are going to play around Toronto in a few weeks. We're going to touch on that in a later episode. We have another cool interview coming soon that we won't get to this week, but I promise you guys will enjoy it. It's with another notable Blue Devil from the past who we also get to talk to. So without further ado, let's hear the interview with Steven Pagliuca that Jason and Donald did the other day.
So I'm thrilled now to say that we are joined by Steve Pagliuca, who is a Duke dad, not just of a regular student, but of two basketball players and a daughter who also attended Duke. And he also happens to own the Boston Celtics. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining us here on the DBR podcast. We're thrilled to have you in our presence. The Celtics are obviously a huge favorite of all Duke fans nowadays because you guys have lots of Dukies on the roster.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's great to see Shemi up here. Shemi was actually went to Duke, then SMU, but he was my son Nick's roommate his first year at Duke, and we got Jason Tatum and Kyrie Irving, so it's fantastic.
So, Steve, the way we're going to work this is Donald is going to come in now, and he's going to ask you a little bit about your sons at Duke and about your relationship to the school. And then once he asks his questions, I'm going to come back, and we'll talk a little bit more about the NBA. But let's start with the Duke stuff, the fun stuff. Donald, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Jason. And Steve, thank you again for joining the podcast. Let's talk about Duke basketball. As mentioned, your son, Joe, was on the team and graduated in 2006. Nick also played and graduated in 2007. And your daughter, Stephanie, was a 2013 Duke graduate. What's your relationship with the Duke program like? What was it before they entered school, and how did it change when they became students?
Well, it goes way back to the fact I attended Duke in 1973 and graduated in 77. And oddly enough, I was looking at many college football programs myself, and I played football and basketball in high school. And I was down there potentially going to look at the Duke football team. And I was playing in Card Gym, which is still there today, the old Card Gym. And some of the coaches came and asked me to try out for the freshman team. They used to have a kind of a freshman team back in those days and a varsity team because they saw me playing and they thought I had some talent. So I ended up making that team myself, and my claim to fame is I was probably the worst player on the worst Duke team ever in 1974, and that record won't be broken over the next 50 years. So I had the opportunity to play with those guys. They had some great players on the team. Tate Armstrong was an Olympian. He was a fantastic shooter, but he was kind of the whole team. And I graduated in 77, and they of course turned the program around starting in 77, 78, and I think went to the quarterfinals. So I have a long relationship with Duke, and I was thrilled. All three of my sons played college basketball. The third one you didn't mention went to Amherst and played on the freshman. I played on the team in Amherst that actually won the championship a few years ago. So they all played high school basketball. Were very good players. in the Boston area, kind of 20-point scorers. And they just fell in love with Duke and had the opportunity to try out for the Duke team. And 10 years apart, both of them made the Duke team as a walk-on. And they really enjoyed the experience. It was just incredible for my family.
And Joe was on the 2004 team that went to a Final Four, played with future retired jerseys and Sheldon Williams and JJ Redick. Also my team, because that was when I graduated. I'm dating myself. But what was your greatest memory of Joe's time at Duke, of any of those games?
That was a really good team, and I think Sheldon got in foul trouble. We were in San Antonio for the Final Four, and he got in foul trouble and fouled out of the game, and we lost a very close game to a great UConn team. So I'll always remember that very tight game. I actually attended a game with Danny Ainge down in San Antonio, and it was really fantastic to see.
We were robbed in that game. The officials fouled everyone over the side of 6'5" out of the game. It was a crime. I was the first person.
I was the first person in the Duke section to get their tickets for that game. I was in row 1, seat 1, so I have a vivid memory of that game, and this is the first I've ever spoke of it.
Yeah, wow, it was amazing. And yeah, Okafor had a lot of fouls himself. I think he was one short of fouling out as well. So, but that's how basketball goes. Sometimes the official gods are with you, and sometimes they're not. And that was a very close, hard-fought game, and UConn was a good team. But yeah, Joe had a fantastic season. What I remember once also is Joe hurt his back, and this shows you about Coach K. Joe was a bench player and a walk-on player, but he had a disectomy from a back injury sustained in practice, and I remember at the hospital when he came out of the hospital, the first. They handed him right on the gurney. They handed him a cell phone, and it was Coach K calling to check up on him and really pay attention to him. So that just shows you, the kind of level of caring that Coach K has for the players, and that's impressed me then. It's impressed me, it's his whole run at Duke.
Yeah, and fast forward to 2015, Nick played on that national championship team. How was that? Watching one of your kids, lift a national championship trophy, get a ring. How was that experience for you as a parent?
That was a really incredible experience. Very, very rare to get that. And we had watched the same thing at Amherst with my son Jesse as well. So we were fortunate to be at the Division III championship, which Amherst won, and also the Knicks championship. So the whole family was there. Jesse came down from Amherst, and my daughter came, and Joe came, and his wife, and the whole family. And that whole run was incredibly exciting. I remember Julio Okafor. His family was almost like a kind of traveling cheering section, and it was infectious. And the family group bonded together. The team bonded together, and they won some extraordinary games. The game against Wisconsin, which was a fantastic team, was just amazing.
Okay, now we've talked about both your kids that played at Duke. This is the part where we get to tell you to pick one. You played at Duke back in the day. I'm sure you've played both of them one-on-one. Two-part question. One, which one is better at one-on-one? And when was the last time you beat any of them at a game of pickup?
Wow. I kind of chickened out. I stopped playing them when they were good enough to beat me, which was probably both in their sophomore, junior years in high school. I was a lot younger when Joe went through. But they were different but complementary players. Joe is a pure shooter, and I think he led his team in scoring in high school and threes. And Nick had a little more athleticism and penetration abilities as well as being able to shoot three. So I think they still play today, and I think it's real close. I think it's kind of 50-50. They're both about the same size. They're kind of clones of each other 10 years apart. So they're almost like twins 10 years apart, and they have a lot of fun playing out there.
And now that they have all graduated and moved on, what is your relationship now with the Duke basketball program and the university as a whole?
Well, I've been fortunate to, I think 4 years ago, join the board of trustees. I was also before that on the undergraduate board and chairman of the undergraduate board. So I've had a long, 20-year, 25-year, ever since I left the school, relationship with Duke. I showed up at Duke. It's funny, back in the day versus my kids, I grew up in New Jersey and played basketball and football, and I applied to a bunch of colleges. I never went to any college that I was going to go to at that point in time. And you just apply out of a brochure. And I liked the Duke brochure, and I got into a few colleges, and I said, "Gee, it's warm weather down there. It looks like a great place." Just from the brochure. No internet in those days. And I to put myself through school, I worked for a moving company, kind of moving furniture in and out of trucks and driving it across either across the country or locally. And I was able to get my last job was a truckload going to Florida, and I convinced the guy to not only hire me, but I went with him, and he would drop me off at Duke. So it was a friend of mine's father in high school was the trucker, and my friend was there with me too. And so we rolled up to Duke in a 45-foot giant, tractor trailer moving van. And people thought, wow, this is some really wealthy person showing up. All I had was one duffel bag, and went to the back of this truck, pulled out the duffel bag, and they actually slept in the parking lot. But that was my introduction to Duke, showing up on a moving van of furniture I had loaded to go down to Florida. And ever since the first day there, I've loved Duke. I walked under those arches on West Campus, and ever since the first day I was there, I said, this is just a great place. And the basketball in the ACC now, but then was just infectious. The ACC was dominant league when I went to school there, and every night when teams came in, it was the students were going crazy. They used to wear the lefty Drizel bald heads and sit across the bench. It's actually probably a tamer now than it even was then when you had 25 people show up with bald heads sitting right behind the coach in Maryland. It was incredible. So really, really great experience. I played for 2 years and sprained my ankle, and in the junior and senior year where I didn't play, I realized I'd be much more likely to be a good accountant than a good basketball player. I studied accounting, but I did back in those days. They had a university-wide one-on-one tournament, and I made it into the finals and actually won it my senior year. And they played the finals at halftime of the Carolina game. So to think of that, in those days, the halftime show was the one-on-one championship with Duke University. And I played in the finals my senior year and won it in 1977. So that was my one basketball accomplishment at Duke.
Oh my God, that's such an awesome story. I had no idea that they did that. They had stopped doing that by the time I got there in the mid '80s. They need to bring that back, guys. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of pressure. I remember my junior year. I was kind of arrogant because I had played basketball, so I took all. They didn't have a 3-point shot then, but I took all shots from the top of the key, and a guy beat me by driving in. And so my senior year, I started to do the same thing. One of my roommates ran out on the court and said, "Stop doing that." So you got to win this one. So I drove in and I scored a couple of buckets, and I think the game was to 11. But it was such a defensive struggle that I think I scored 7 or 8 points, and then the team had to come out, so they declared me the victor because I was ahead 8-7. I think at the time the team had to come back out in the court, so it was really a thrill to play that match at the halftime of Cameron. But I think they're on to better things now.
Well, Steve, we're gonna move on from your time at Duke and your relationship with Duke to the NBA, which is obviously what you're really known for now. Talk to me really quickly. So, I mean, you played basketball. You were a really good basketball player, and now you're a team owner. Lifelong dream. And tell us how it happened that you got to own an NBA team.
Well, I was very fortunate. I had come to Boston and joined Bain and Company and got into the private equity business and worked my way up in that. And a friend and neighbor in my town, Weston, named Wick Grossbeck, who's a fantastic guy, called me and said that he had a line in to possibly purchase the Celtics. And at first I thought, boy, that sounds like it's a big challenge. But I loved basketball and I really hit it off with Wick. And so I came over to his house and he asked me to partner with him and his father to try and buy the Celtics. And within 3 or 4 days, I'd agreed and we signed a contract, and then the rest is history. It's been a wonderful partnership, and we brought in many more folks in the community. Wick actually quit his job and became the CEO. I stayed at Bain Capital, but Wick has actually driven the success as a CEO and owner of the team as well. And I think our original philosophy in buying the team, we had three major objectives. The first one obviously was to try to build a championship team, and that's the hardest one. The second, which was more accomplishable, was to make it a better fan experience. So we'd done a study of the stadium and fan amenities, and the previous ownership had not focused as much on that. And so we had a plan to really improve the fan experience, get them closer to the players, closer to the action, more things to the fans. And the third, and maybe most important, was to use the Celtics brand for community development. So we formed something called the Boston Celtics Shamrock Foundation, and I became the president of that foundation. And the ownership group was fantastic. They all joined and donated money, and that was about 16 years ago. Now we've given away millions of dollars to hundreds of kids programs and built technology centers and become a kind of leading force in the community, and our players have jumped in. So those were the kind of the three objectives. And back on the first one, we decided to invest a lot more money in scouting, technology, to try to improve the basketball operations. And the key thing was being able to land Danny Ainge, a former Celtic legend, to kind of lead the program, and Wick becoming the CEO and directly, and Rich Gotham and a bunch of key individuals. Basically put our heads down, took a long-term strategy to build a championship team, and we did that within 6 years, and then have rebuilt now, and now we're in good shape as well. And this time, it's going to be
good shape. You guys are in great shape.
Great shape, and I love having three Dukies out there on the Celtics right now.
Well, let me ask you about Danny Ainge very quickly. Do other owners ever come up to you and say, "You guys are not fair"? It feels like he's playing, three-dimensional chess, and the rest of the league's playing checkers. I mean, are you just amazed at some of the moves he's made to put you guys in? There's no other team in the league. I don't say this as a Celtic fan. I say this as a fan of the NBA. There's no team that is in the position that you all are, of having incredible young talent, a great mix of veterans, and unbelievable assets moving forward. Like, how has Danny done it?
Yeah, Danny's an extraordinary individual. I was close friends with Danny before we bought the Celtics, and in fact, we called him to consult with him on who we should hire. And fortunately, he decided during the consulting process that he'd like to take a run at it. He had a fantastic career, as you know, as a player, as a coach, working in the front office. He also was a commentator, a great commentator. I think people forget that he was an excellent analyst. So we thought at that point in time, he wouldn't want to really switch jobs because he had a great job and was making a lot of money. But as the more he got into it, he decided he wanted the job. And so Wick and I talked, and he met the ownership group, and we were very impressed from the get-go because, number one, the little known fact is he's a hard worker. So he looks at every player, he follows them, from 5 years old till they're in the NBA on a global basis. He's 24/7, and he has a rare skill of have been in all the positions. He's been a star player, he's been a star college player, he's been a coach. So he knows basketball from every level, soup to nuts, from the business end to the strategic end. And so we do think we're blessed to have him, and he's built a staff that's incredible as well. So that the team is a high functioning team with Mike Zarin and Austin Ainge and Dave Lewin, and they've been together a long time. So we feel blessed to have that kind of talent. I think the rest of the league is jealous. Although the rest of the league has some great guys too. Daryl Morey worked for us, and he's now the GM of Houston. He's put together a great team, and Joe Lake was part of our ownership group here in Boston before he got involved with the Warriors. So we have a lot of Chris Wallace is down he used to be our assistant general manager and assistant general manager is down at the Grizzlies. So there's a lot of former Celtics folks out there, Doc Rivers, throughout the league. But Danny is truly just an extraordinary individual, and I think a rare combination of someone who thinks strategically, but also can quickly assess and make great tactical trades to improve the team. So it's a rare combination of skills.
Yeah, speaking of tactical trades, so the move last year to get Jason Tatum, did you have any insight, special insight into him because of his time at Duke, and because obviously you're going to watch the Duke team a little more closely probably than other college teams because of your loyalty to the school. Did you have any say at all in that, or were you just a happy bystander?
It's interesting. Danny is another great skill he has is he talks to everyone, has discussions, and the ownership group of Wick and myself we're more of a strategic sounding board for him, rather than any kind of specifics on what players should be picked. But yeah, Danny gets any kind of information he can. And I remember the first time I ever saw Jason Tatum play was in the blue-white game at Duke, and that blue-white squad probably had 4 or 5 McDonald's All-Americans on it. And I'd seen, games for 25 years down there. But literally, I ran out of the gym, out of Cameron after that blue-white game, and I called Danny and I said, Danny, there's this kid, Jason Tatum. He looks like Paul Pierce. He looks like a pro, playing at some of the best competition with 5 McDonald's All-Americans. He's head and shoulders above everybody else. I said he's got to be, up there in the top couple, in my opinion, of players that will be in the draft. And Danny said, yes, I've been following him since he's 5 years old. He's incredible. He's one of the best high school players in the world. So Danny knew a lot about Jason and had him on the radar screen from day one. And which is again why I think Danny's so great. He knew all about Jason, but I got to see Jason play for 25 times a year, so every game, and felt like he was a fantastic player in a group of players that were really good that year.
But can I let me jump in and ask? Did you realize how good he'd be in the pros? I mean, his what he did for you guys down the stretch, especially once Kyrie Irving got hurt, had to shock even you, didn't it?
Yeah, I think no one expected. There's been very few players that have had that kind of impact in their first year in the league, especially at 19 years old. So we knew he had potential, and I knew from seeing him in the blue-white game and watching the Duke season, he had some ups and downs on his shooting, but a lot of that was caused by the fact that he had a stress fracture. So I think had he not had that stress fracture, the rest of the NBA might have seen him in a different way, because he started to really heat up in the ACC tournament, if you remember, and the NCAA tournament. But that was at the tail end of the season, and he was hampered by that injury. And if you have a stress fracture and you're injured, your shot's going to be a little off. So he was not really taking the three that much in the first 15 games or so, and he started doing that in the ACC tournament and penetrating and driving and looking like the great player that he is. But he's almost unique in the fact that I can't remember a person that had that much impact coming in the NBA when they're 19, coming in their first year. So, yeah, I think he surprised everybody. We thought he'd be a great player long term, but it turns out with the injuries that we had, he had to step up, and he stepped up and really was one of the driving forces to get us to the Eastern Conference Final.
So I want to ask you a little bit, just really quickly, about the NBA and how it's changed since you became an owner. I mean, David Stern was there when you were first an owner, and now we've moved on to Adam Silver. But the league's relationship with amateur basketball feels like the thing that's really changed. Can you talk about that a little bit? And I'm not only talking about one and done, but just Tatum's 19. The league is now full of guys who are so young.
Yeah, there's just been a David Stern and Adam Silver, I think, collectively have done a fantastic job as commissioner of the NBA. And I don't know if you know, but Adam Silver is on the board of Duke and is a Dookie as well. So
yeah, by the way, can you put in a good word? We'd love to interview him as well.
Yeah, you should interview him. He's been incredible as a commissioner, incredible on the Duke board, and he's just a very talented guy. But I think the world has recognized that these players have gotten better and better. You have specialization quicker. And when I was in high school, I played football, basketball, and multiple sports. Right now people specialize early. And they get better earlier and have better training. And and there's been the Condoleezza Rice Commission, really trying to figure out, what is the direction of basketball in America. So I think you'll see some changes coming out of that. Adam has really enhanced the development league, what's called the G League right now. And so there are more avenues for players to come in at a younger age and develop. So I think you're seeing right now we're in the middle of a transition, and people are talking about real changes in college. You've already seen major changes in college. The Condoleezza report really indicated that a lot of the colleges are not as happy with the one and done, and I think they said that there should be more access to the NBA, and I think Adam and the NBA has taken that under advisement, and we'll see where all that goes. But I think you're in the middle of change, and I wouldn't be surprised at some point, to see younger players back in the league. But we had that when we bought the team in 2003. You could draft high school players, and then they went away from that. But you are seeing, more and more development of players at a younger age.
So I think we're ready to wrap it up. I want to thank you so much. You've been fabulous. It's been really great to talk to you. We have a tradition here. Every time we have someone on, we ask them for a Coach K story. And we've gotten some good ones. We've gotten stories about Coach K coming in the locker room with a samurai sword and to inspire the team, and other really interesting tales about, their interactions with Coach K. I know that you haven't had quite as much, intimate interaction with him, as a player would, but do you have a good Coach K story you can give to all of us as we wrap up the interview?
Well, I've been fortunate in that I've attended, I think I was in my 11th or 12th Coach K camp this summer. So I played in the Coach K camps and gotten to know him, through his fantastic camp that he runs. I'm now getting so ancient that I'm moving to the golf division, but I did the basketball for 9 or 10 years there. But I guess my most interesting story would be when Nick was on, when Joe was on the team back in 2004. I think the team that went to the Final Four, they had one practice that wasn't going so well, and so I think shortly into the practice, and Joe was a freshman, so he was incredulous when this happened. I think Coach K picked up one of those big garbage cans and threw it out on the court and said, you guys are playing terrible. You don't deserve to wear a Duke uniform, so I'm just canceling practice today. So the team was stunned and walked off the floor dejectedly. And you're not allowed to practice again until the next day. And I think what they ended up doing was calling all the players at 11:59 at night, and they went in for practice at a little after midnight, I think, to be responsive to the rules. And I think that really turbocharged and propelled that team with their eyes wide open on what the standard at Duke would be. So I think Coach K uses all the techniques, but that one was one that certainly got the attention of the team and put them on a great run to make the Final Four.
Well, Steve, thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks again for joining us here on the Duke Basketball Report podcast. Great insight, and again, congratulations on the success of your family, your kids, the success of the Boston Celtics, both in the past and very much in the future. We will all be watching. Can't wait to see what Kyrie and Jason Tatum do together this coming year. Oh, and you know what? I just remembered. I have to ask you, because Duke fans everywhere wonder about this. If, when the day comes that Coach K retires and leaves, how will you feel if Brad Stevens, talks about or thinks about coming to take Coach K's place at Duke?
Look, the funny thing is I bleed green and blue and love both of those guys. And I can't imagine a world without Coach K left. I think he's still going strong. And so I think they'll both have huge careers at their respective institutions. The interesting is, one thing that Coach K has always taught is that the best thing in life is being part of something, which you guys are too, part of something bigger than yourself. And being part of the Duke, basketball program ever since I came there in 1973, I think has been a big part of my life. And one of the most fulfilling things, seeing my kids go there, seeing the success that the Duke kids have come in the NBA and business, and Coach K's success, and Duke University as a whole. So it's been a big part of my life, and I've been fortunate because I had the trifecta. I was able to be part of an organization at Bain Capital that's done the same thing, and part of the Boston Celtics. So I couldn't be happier, and now it's kind of all melding together with having Kyrie up here and Tatum being such a star. It's just we couldn't be in a better place. So I'm excited about 2018, excited as I've ever been, and maybe I'll even come out of retirement off the golf course and do the basketball again next year. I feel so good about it.
Sounds good to us. Steve, again, thank you so much. Great interview. We appreciate it, sir.
All right, great to be here. Bye-bye.
So thanks again to Stephen Pagliuca for joining us here on the DBR podcast. I think it was a really interesting interview, and I want to get reactions from the two of you. So from your talk, so Donald, why don't you take it first? What was your take on the interview? Was there anything that stood out that Stephen shared with us?
The one thing I really liked about Steve's interview is that you could tell he has an immense pride for his kids, and especially the fact that they played basketball at Duke University. You can hear it in his voice. Him recalling some of the moments that he shared with his kids. One going to the Final Four, one winning a national championship. The pride that he has. We don't get a lot of Duke parents in that perspective on this podcast, and I think that was a very refreshing perspective, especially considering who he is. He is an owner of an NBA team, and he almost at that point you couldn't tell because he was at that point a Duke parent. I really enjoyed that. I also enjoyed the fact that he talks about how he basically quit while he was ahead in playing one-on-one against his kids because he knew there was a point they were going to beat them. So I really enjoyed him kind of recalling that. But just the sense of, getting that Duke parent perspective and getting it from a guy who really has a stature that very few Duke parents have is very, very, I think is unique. And I really enjoyed seeing that perspective and hearing that perspective from him and really getting to know about his relationship with his kids and how that affects him and his relationship with our university.
Donald, do you think it was a little bit of a cop-out that he doesn't play his kids in one-on-one anymore?
No, because here's the thing. I don't have any kids, but when I have kids, I guarantee you, I'm going to wait until hold on.
Maybe this is a question. This might be a question for Jason Evans, noted synagogue lead basketball champion, right, Jason?
I have to chime in at this point because I, like Steve, have two sons, both of whom played basketball. Now, they didn't play it anywhere close to the Duke level, but they both played high school basketball, sort of like their father. I played high school basketball, and my kids reached the high school level. Steve played college basketball, and his kids reached the college level. So I can relate to what he's talking about, and I'm going to tell you guys something, because you all are young, and you don't understand this yet. When your kids get to be about 15 or so, and they get to be tall enough and physically strong enough that they could possibly compete with you, that's right around the time that your body starts to go to shit. So I, too, have not played one-on-one with my sons in several years. And the reason for that is because they would beat the crap out of me because I'm old and broken down. And that's just the reality of turning 40, 45, 50 years old. 40, not so bad. 45, yeah. I'm now 51. Let me tell you something. If I tried to play my 21-year-old son, he would laugh and beat me, 11-2 or something like that. It's just I'm not fast enough anymore. And I'm sure Steve is the same way with his sons.
Well, I do remember when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I ran track growing up. And, I was very fast, but people were like, where did you get your speed from? I got it from my dad. I did not beat my dad in a race until I was like 15 years old. But the day I did was the last time I ever got him to challenge me to a race, because at that point he realized that I was better than him and he did not want to have that. He was not about that life anymore. And shout out my dad. I love my dad. But when he has instilled a life lesson. When I turn like 11 or 12, or when my kids turn 11 or 12, whenever they are way down the line, I quit. I'm quitting while I'm ahead. I'm quitting while I'm top. There's no way they're going to beat me because I'm not going to experience the face that I saw my dad as I stormed past him in a 100-meter dash.
I said I ran circles around my dad in ping pong last week, and I think he regretted it entirely. Jason, let me hear your thoughts from the interview. What stood out to you?
We are back on topic now. So there were two moments in the interview that I made a note to myself. I went, this was a great moment. One of them was when he talked about winning the one-on-one campus championship in a halftime game in Cameron. What a cool thing. I wish Duke still did that. I think that would just be awesome. I mean, can you imagine, like, what you got to do is you got to have, like, I mean, it'd probably be a, 264 person. I mean, you'd have a huge tournament, just one-on-one, knocking each other out till you get down to two guys left and they get to play in Cameron. I think that's amazing. Duke needs to do that again. And then the other one that I loved, what a great story. He's at the blue-white game last year. The game ends and he runs out of the stadium so he can call Danny Ainge to tell Danny about Jason Tatum and tell him how great Jason Tatum is, because Pags has just seen the coming of the next great thing. And he wants to tell his GM. And Ainge's response is, yeah, I've been watching him since he was 5. I love that. That's so Danny Ainge. That is so. I am not a huge Celtics fan, inherently. I root for my Atlanta Hawks. I've never been a big Celtics fan, but listening to Pags talk about it and listening to and admiring Danny Ainge and what he's put together, especially with all the Dukies, you have to become a Celtic fan. And I just love that Ainge had been on Jason Tatum for a long, long time, and that he absolutely fleeced the Philadelphia 76ers for an extra first-round draft pick, and still got the kid he wanted, who arguably has as bright a future as anyone in the NBA right now.
He mentioned when he was talking about the Dukies on the team, he was talking about Kyrie, he was talking about Jason Tatum, and he was talking about Semi Ojeleye, who obviously we all know transferred out and finished his career at SMU. But I think that's important because he is following the mentality of once a Dukie, always a Dukie. And I think that's something that is forgotten sometimes among our fan base. I thought it was very important that he mentioned Semi along the lines of Kyrie and Jason as Duke family that were on the Celtics, and he was proud of that. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting note. And when we were thinking about this interview, I was, the three of us were kind of batting questions around and stuff. And I thought, well, I guess we should say that he has 3 Duke guys on the team, even though, Duke basketball isn't gonna promote Semi Ojeleye in all the Duke Blue Planet stuff anymore since he transferred away. But he's still in some way a part of the family, because he was at Duke and knows all those guys, was obviously friends with Nick. So I thought that was cool, and I thought all the stories were fun. So thanks again to Steven and to you guys for conducting that interview. This episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast is brought to you by the boys of Bird Campbell, PA, with law offices in Florida and Texas. Bird Campbell means business. All right, so earlier today, Duke basketball put out the final form, the final draft of the non-conference schedule for this season. So we're going to take a look at that. We already knew before today that Duke was getting Kentucky in the Champions Classic in Indianapolis to tip off the season in early November. And we already knew that they were returning to the Maui Invitational, a tournament at which Duke has never lost a game in all of their appearances. And we also knew that they were going to be hosting Indiana in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. We did not know the rest of the schedule. And so the additions today included, I think, highlighted by a Veterans Day game against West Point, Coach K's alma mater, of course, on November 11th. And then other home games against Stetson, Hartford, Yale, and Princeton throughout the end of November and December. Duke gets Texas Tech in Madison Square Garden. I think we also knew about that one before today. And then they get St. John's in Cameron in a return game from last year's Madison Square Garden contest. The game this year is in Cameron in early February. So I think a pretty standard non-conference schedule based on the sort of the last few years of non-conference scheduling for Duke. So I'll throw it to Jason first. What's your impression of what we learned today about the schedule? Is any of it particularly interesting to you?
Well, you may say it's standard, but I think this is a real upgrade on last year's schedule, and this is one of the toughest schedules that I've seen for Duke. Army, Stetson, Hartford, Princeton, and Yale should all be easy. I know Donald wants to talk a little bit more about Eastern Michigan, so I'll let him talk about them. But I mean, Eastern Michigan returned their top 3 scorers, and all 3 of those guys are going to be seniors. And they've got a big man who is an absolute double-double machine who will not be intimidated by the Duke big men. So Eastern Michigan's a pretty good team. Indiana, who we play for the second year in a row in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, I think has significantly upgraded from the Indiana team of last year, and they gave us all we could handle last year. They've got Romeo Langford as a freshman. I saw him at the McDonald's All-American practices, and at times he was absolutely the best player on the floor out there, playing, alongside Cam Reddish, Zion Williamson, and R.J. Barrett, and all the other guys. I mean, Romeo Langford is a crazy, ridiculous stud. And Indiana brings back a lot of the guys they had on last year's team. I think Indiana's a top 25 team. Kentucky is a top 5 team. And then the Maui field is really going to be tough. Our first round matchup against San Diego State. San Diego State is another team that I think may be on the fringe of the top 25. They bring back 4 of their top 6 scorers, and they have a strong recruiting class. I mean, you may think, oh, they're nothing, but San Diego State is going to think they can compete with Nevada in their conference. They will not be easy. After that, we probably get Auburn, who is a top 10 team. And then probably you're playing Gonzaga in the championship. They're a top 5 team. So between and I forgot to mention Texas Tech. We got Texas Tech, who was a top 10 team last year. Now they lost a lot, but they'll be decent again. I mean, this is a schedule where Duke is playing multiple top 5 teams, multiple top 10 teams, multiple top 25 teams in their non-conference. I mean, that's a really tough schedule. And I'm impressed that with a young team, I think the youngest team Coach K has ever had, certainly the least experienced team he's ever had, that Coach K is biting off this much. It tells me something perhaps about what he thinks these guys can bring to the table. Could be special.
Donald, did you want to tell us a little bit about the Eastern Michigan squad?
Guys, give me 1 second.
Oh my God! It sounded like he placed us in a toilet.
In a WWE ring where there was a chair being thrown.
That was loud.
Can you guys hear me? I'm in a bar.
I can hear you. There's still some background noise.
You're in a bar?
Yeah. Give me 1 second.
This is great. This is great audio. Leave this in.
He's in a bar. That's so funny.
You know what? Hey, this isn't as bad. This isn't as bad as me calling in from the Hooters parking lot a few years ago.
There was just a car driving by. We just heard a motorcycle.
Yeah, Donald, are you okay, man? Are you involved in any sort of gang violence? Is everything okay?
I'm in Utah. It's fine.
Wait. How are you at a bar in Utah? It's dry.
the whole state is dry.
Utah is not dry. Let me tell you, it's very not dry.
Donald actually was bootlegging.
Okay. Ask the question.
Donald, what do you think about the non-conference schedule?
We're leaving this in. We're not editing any of this out.
That's fine. I don't care. Look, I want to talk about my birthplace. I was born November 30th, 1982 in Ypsilanti, Michigan. I was born at St. Joseph Mercy Hospital, which is across the street from Eastern Michigan University. And I cannot tell you how excited I am to see Duke play Eastern Michigan on November 14th. So here's the thing. Eastern Michigan, Jason, you like to gaslit them a little bit. They are not a good team. They were not a good team last year. They were not a good team the year before that. But they are a team that is steadily improving. And with those 3 guys that you mentioned, and especially the big guy that's like a double-double machine, he is going to lead them to what should be a much improved season from years past. And I think that's what's most exciting, is because we're getting a team that has a lot of potential, and they're going to play out of their minds in Cameron. That's what that's what we have to expect with all these teams. But especially Eastern Michigan, is going to be great to see a team from literally where I was born play in Cameron. I think that's a great thing. I do think that Indiana is going to be a great matchup in Cameron. It's always going to be one of the great matchups. But really, the Maui Invitational and the Kentucky game, really. Let's talk about Kentucky for a second. I think is going to be a great matchup, but it's the first game of the season, so there's really not a lot you can take from that. The fact that they moved the season a week, basically like a week up, and putting that first really means that it's just the first game. It's going to be a lot of hoopla about it, but you really can't take a lot from it because it is the first game. That Maui Invitational, that's where we're going to see what this team kind of becomes, because I think that's going to be a really great field and a lot of great tests in Maui. And like you said, Sam, we've never lost there. So I think that is something that, I'm looking forward to. I know a lot of Duke fans are going to be out there in Maui, and I think that's going to be where we can see where this team really is going.
I would contend actually that this is a good year for them to be switching it up as far as the timing of the Champions Classic, because Duke has those extra exhibition games in August, so they'll have had 5 tune-up games with this roster to get ready for Kentucky. Now, Kentucky's going to be much, much better than any of the teams that they'll play prior to that. But I'll be ready to jump in and start, taking things away from that game. I think that given the extra practice time they'll have this year, and given a lot of the talent that we're excited to see in guys like Barrett and Williamson, I want to be able to draw conclusions about this team pretty quickly, because they're going to have to learn quick. There are those tough games in Maui. Jason, I guess I don't know enough about Romeo Langford to know how much better Indiana's going to be this year, but I'll trust you that they're going to be much improved, although the game is in Cameron. So this team doesn't have a lot of time to get ready for conference play, and it's going to go by really quickly for them, probably quicker than it has felt for teams in the past where they could rely on senior leadership. That there's not going to be much of that this year. Marquise Bolden's going to be the most experienced guy on the team, and he's been pretty much a bit player for his first 2 years in Durham. So we need to be understanding this team and learning about them, and they need to be learning about each other pretty quickly. So I'm excited about that. I am generally glad that the regular season kicks off with the Champions Classic, because I think it gives the sport and it gives Duke an opportunity to really be, on the national stage immediately. I think that the way that the college basketball season sort of feels like it comes in like a lamb in November every year doesn't really do the sport many favors. So hopefully having that marquee event coinciding with the actual first night of play is going to be good for college basketball, and of course good for Duke, because we love when the Blue Devils are on ESPN and playing for everybody, because they tend to shine. Let's go around the horn now and talk about some NBA news. There's a lot of former Blue Devils who got to play in Summer League this year, and a couple others who signed some new contracts. So I wanted to touch on a few of those and get your guys, Jason and Donald, your reactions to some of the Blue Devil in the NBA news from over the summer. So I want to start with Grayson Allen, who, as you all may recall, was drafted by the Utah Jazz last month. Had a pretty great summer league run, although the headlines were unfortunately dominated by a little scuffle that he had with former Oklahoma guard Trae Young. Donald, did you get to see Grayson Allen's summer league play at all? And do you think that the Jazz got a steal with their 21st pick in the draft?
I think they did. And here's the thing about Summer League that has really improved over the last few years is that it is now something that people put their eyeballs on. I mean, it used to be 2 years ago, they were in high school gyms in Vegas, and it was barely on NBA TV, and people were like, oh, you can't really take much from this. Now they're in the Thomas and Mack Center. They're in the Utah's arena where there's sold out crowds, and people are coming to see these rookies play. Some guys make their mark on the team, and what it does is it gives kind of an elevated boost as to what you might be able to expect from the regular season. And I think with Grayson Allen, you can see that he's going to be a guy that they can count on down the stretch. I'm not sure if there's a lot that you could take from Summer League in the sense of is he up to NBA caliber yet? No, he's not going to be. He just got there. But I think by the time training camp starts, this will be an opportunity for him to really look at tape and say, hey, I can compete in the NBA. I can be a star in the NBA. And if he comes in with that mindset, the Utah Jazz are better for it.
I mean, we've known that he's physically capable of handling the NBA. It's a matter of putting it all together for him, and I think that that showed in his summer league performance.
Just lightning fast, I just want to mention about Grayson. We should note that as a senior, as a guy who just graduated, he was actually older than most of the guys he was playing with in summer league. I don't say this to put him down or anything like that. He had a really good summer league, and I think he is going to be a contributor at the NBA level, which is great for him. And I think Utah did get a really good pick when they picked him up. But let's just remember in summer league that he was playing against a lot of guys who were 19, maybe 20, and Grayson's 22, I think. So, just wanted to point that out.
All right, a grain of salt has been noted. Jason, tell me about your impressions of the limited performance we got to see from Marvin Bagley. Unfortunately, his summer league time was cut short by an injury, but he was sort of up and down in the couple games that we saw from him. What do you make of his brief summer league tenure with the Kings?
Well, like you guys were saying, I mean, you should never try and read too much into summer league. There are guys who excel in summer league who end up not being players very much, and there are guys who don't do well in summer league who then end up being really good. That said, I think the Kings probably had hoped that Marvin Bagley would be a little bit better than he was in summer league. As you mentioned, he injured his pelvic bone. That's his butt. He was a pain in the rear. So he only got to play in 4 games. In one of those 4 games, he only had 2 shot attempts in 29 minutes. That's like, I can't even, that doesn't sound like the Marvin Bagley. Yeah, that's not the guy that we knew at Duke. That really surprising that he didn't do more, but he had a couple other games. He had 2 other games where he scored more than 15 points. He definitely struggled with his shot some. He only shot 10% on his 3-pointers and just 33% from the floor in general. But look, I mean, he was young. He was very active. His D, as we knew at Duke, his D is he needs some work on defense, but he showed flashes, little moments where he was dominant. And I don't think we saw anything that is overly concerning, although we didn't see anything that was overly bright and wonderful from him. There's another guy I wanted to talk about from the Kings who is playing on the team with Bagley, and that's Harry Giles. We got to see our first Harry Giles action this summer because he sat out all of last year as he was recovering from his injury. He showed even more flashes, I think, than Bagley did, although Giles really struggled to create his own shot at times. He averaged about 10 points a game, a lot of athleticism, and he showed that he can score in a variety of ways from, mid-range and up close, and he even went outside and shot some threes. But the place I was really impressed was how aggressive and physical he was on defense. He was grabbing lots of rebounds as well, averaged about 7 rebounds a game. And remember, in summer league, you're not playing, no one plays like 35 minutes in a summer league game. Everyone plays like, mid-20s. So 7 rebounds per game is pretty good for Harry Giles. I actually thought Giles looked better than Bagley during his summer league play. And it looks like, you want to talk about steals. I think the Kings, when they picked Giles at number 19, I think it was last year, I think they may have ended up getting a real steal there.
Yeah, and I wanted to follow up by asking you about Giles, so thank you for prompting it for me. Let me go back to Donald real quick. We got news recently that Trevon Duval, who went undrafted last month, signed a 2-way contract with the Milwaukee Bucks, so they're able to shuttle him back and forth between the NBA squad and their G League team in Wisconsin. So he'll probably spend most of the season in the G League, but he may get opportunities to play in the NBA for stretches tomorrow or this coming season. And he'll be on a team that is kind of retooling a little bit. Obviously, Jabari Parker's not there anymore. We'll talk about him in a minute. But Donald, do you think that this is a good landing spot for Duval, given his sort of uneven performance in summer league playing for the Rockets?
I think it's a chance. It's a chance for him to get into the NBA because he did not have that chance a couple weeks ago, or actually a month ago, when he went undrafted in the NBA draft. With Milwaukee Bucks, he has, there's a couple of point guards, and I think with his skill set, especially with his dribbling and his penetration, he has a chance to make a mark. But he has to really improve his shooting. I think with this two-way contract with the Milwaukee Bucks, he'll have a chance to work on that shooting in the G League. And when he does that, that's really going to help his stock. I mean, Quinn Cook, I think, has a much better skill set, entering the NBA than Trayvon Duval did. But at the end of the day, he worked hard. He did a lot of work in the G League, and that's what got him his looks, and that's what got him his opportunity, and he made the most of it. So that's what he has to do. He has to go with the mindset, improve every day, make your mark, and when the time comes, when the opportunity comes for him to join the big club in Milwaukee, make the most of it. Take your shots, make your passes, do your thing, and show that you belong in the NBA and show that you belong that you need to stay up with the big club. I think that's what the two-way contract is for. And I think in the end of the day, he needs to really accept this and say, this is my opportunity to get into the NBA. This is how I have to do it. Let's go ahead and do it.
I'm curious to find out if Milwaukee has a shooting coach that's going to be helping Duval sort of develop his shot, and hopefully that'll ease his transition and make it more likely that he is able to succeed at the next level. So we'll be looking out for that. And then finally, Jason, I wanted to come back to you. The Chicago Bulls had a lot of interaction with Duke players this summer. Of course, they drafted Wendell Carter with the 7th pick. He showed out really well in summer league. And then just the other day, they signed hometown guy Jabari Parker to a 2-year, $40 million contract. Parker kind of had a sort of up and down time in Milwaukee, but he gets to start fresh in Chicago. So what was your impression of the Bulls in their summer of Duke players?
Well, so first of all, let's talk about Wendell Carter, who made the all summer league first team, which is a thing apparently. Wendell Carter was as good as any player in summer league basketball, and he was, this was a draft that was full of big men. It was considered a big man heavy draft, and Jaren Jackson Jr. and DeAndre Ayton and Marvin Bagley, and the list goes on and on. Mo Bamba. Carter was the best of any of them in summer league. There's little question of that. He averaged almost 15 points per game, 9.5 rebounds per game, 2.6 blocks per game. His defense, people who watch summer league games were raving about Wendell Carter's defense, his anticipation, his ability to block shots and alter shots, his ability to help on defense. Wendell Carter looked fabulous, and he was even stepping out. Look, we saw it at Duke. He was hitting 3-pointers in college. He hit them in the pros as well. He stepped out to the NBA 3-point line, and he was hitting 3-pointers. There are people who are already saying that with the 7th pick in the draft, in a deep loaded draft, the Bulls may have gotten the future NBA Rookie of the Year in Wendell Carter. That's how good of a summer league season he had. Now, as for Jabari Parker, his deal with the Bulls is a really interesting one. Everyone is talking about it's 2 years, $40 million. That's a lot of money, but only one of those years is guaranteed. And I think what the Bulls essentially did is they got 1 year at $20 million of Jabari Parker, and they'll see if he is great. If he has a really fabulous season, maybe they pick up that option, but I think it's pretty likely that they will let him go because they're going to want cap space next summer. Next summer is the summer of the free agent. Everybody and their brother are going to be free agents next summer. LeBron James won't be, but a lot of other guys will be. And teams have tons of cap space, and there's going to be a lot of bidding for high-profile free agents. And the other thing I wanted to mention about Jabari Parker, and by the way, congrats to him on getting paid. Even if it ends up only being 1 year, $20 million, you're set for life. Boom, immediately. $20 million, that's a crazy amount of money. I would take 1/10 of that and gladly sit back and enjoy myself. So way to go, Jabari. But I wanted to mention one other thing. Did you guys see Jabari's quote about defense? He said, they don't pay you to play defense. It's a pretty controversial quote. Now, Jabari doesn't play much defense, and he just got paid $20 million. So I guess he's right. But people saw that, they cringed. They were like, "Ooh, no, you shouldn't be saying that it's only half a game because defense."
Didn't James Harden just win? James Harden just win the MVP award?
Yeah, but Harden was actually better. He was better on defense this year than he's been in the past.
That's a low bar. You know that.
That's
So
why
true.
I asked.
James Harden couldn't guard a garden gnome, like, and he won MVP.
I guess Jabari's right then, but I was just like, ooh, I don't know, man. Don't be saying that stuff out loud.
Right, especially like James Harden can say it because like he's that good on offense that it's fine. Jabari Parker has not quite been on that level yet. Yeah, but Jason, those are great updates. So hopefully everyone was tuning into Summer League. As Donald mentioned, it's become much more of a product in its own right the last couple of years. So definitely paying it. It's over for this summer, but paying attention to it going forward, I think is going to be worthwhile and fun. And Blue Devil fans should always check in because it seems like we've always got a new crop of young Blue Devils who are trying to make it in the league. So we'll wrap up this episode with our parting shots as we often do. We don't have players of the week, of course, because we didn't have any games this week. There were no Duke games this week, but there will be some coming up.
Wendell Carter was the player of the week.
All right, Wendell Carter, player of the week.
agree.
Great job in Summer League. We will have players of the week coming back very soon, much sooner than we usually do, because we do have games coming up in a few weeks. But Donald, I'll go to you first for your parting shot from your bootlegging operation out there in Salt Lake City.
It's a great operation. Don't knock it until you try it. With my parting shot, I want to talk about LeBron James. And if you have been living under a rock or you're living in Jupiter, not Florida, the planet, LeBron James signed with the Los Angeles Lakers, guys. And it's been a big deal because a lot of players have decided that because LeBron is on the Lakers is now a destination. And he has been creating what they are calling the LeBron super team. Now, is this really a super team? I don't think so, because we're not talking about the big name free agents of 2018 signing with the Lakers. Paul George, who has literally been on OKC Thunder all year talking about going to the Lakers, re-signed with OKC. Kawhi Leonard, who has said, I want to go to the Lakers, is now in Toronto and now needs to stamp his passport and pay those taxes. Those type of guys aren't going to the Lakers right now. Now, does this shift the balance of power in the West? No, it doesn't. There's still one team. It's Golden State. Golden State, somehow, the two-time NBA champions, 3 out of the last 4 years, got better by adding DeMarcus Cousins for basically a ham sandwich. And at the end of the day, you have Golden State, you have Houston, you have, Oklahoma City is still a pretty good team. You have the San Antonio Spurs, who got DeMar DeRozan, and DeMar DeRozan, while he may not want to be there, he's probably the best player on that team at this point. You have these guys, you have these teams coming out here, and the Lakers really need to assert themselves if they're going to be, quote unquote, one of these super teams. So the whole super team talk with the LA Lakers changing shifting the balance of power in the West, I just don't see it, guys. And hopefully, LeBron is LeBron, but I think his streak of 8 straight NBA Finals is about to end.
Hey, you know what? LeBron went back to the Cavs, who had nobody, and they had Kyrie for a little bit, but even without Kyrie last year, LeBron still dragged them to the finals. So I am a LeBron believer. I don't think that he's going to be able to get past Golden State, just because we know how loaded that team is. But don't count out LeBron. That's my general take. Is that he is capable of superhuman.
Let's be
feats.
clear.
So,
I never count out LeBron. I think LeBron's one of the greatest players of all time. I just count out the Lakers. That's it.
Well,
and I think that's fair.
Hang on. So let me say this. 2 things about it. The first one is there's no question that LeBron James is in a better situation right now than he was 2 months ago. His teammates.
Why? He's not guaranteed to waltz into the finals anymore.
No, he wasn't guaranteed either. He wasn't guaranteed in the East because the Celtics were, when the Celtics' 2 best players aren't injured, the Celtics are making the finals. But I'm just talking in terms of the quality of his team and winning a title. There's no question that the youngsters that the Lakers have, youngsters who are getting older and getting better, plus the free agents that they've signed, that the Lakers are better the supporting cast there is better than the supporting cast he had in Cleveland. I mean, do either of you guys disagree with that? There's no question about that, is there?
Only because they got our dude Brandon Ingram, right?
Exactly. That's it. And that's all we're talking about here. Don't talk about anybody else.
Whatever the reason, the bottom line is his supporting cast is better right now, today, than it was 2 months ago. And I'm convinced the most important aspect of that signing was not that he signed with the Lakers, it's that he signed with the Lakers for 4 years. LeBron made it very, very clear, I am here and I'm here to build something. Trying to go to one more finals next year doesn't mean anything to him. That's not why he's on the Lakers. He's there for several seasons. And like I said a couple minutes ago, next year is the summer of the free agent. Kawhi Leonard is going to be a free agent. He's going to go to the Lakers. It's like almost unquestionable that he's going to go to the Lakers. There are a bunch of other guys who are top end free agents who are going to follow Kawhi and LeBron. And that team, 2018-19, no, the Lakers are not making the finals. 2019-20, 2020-21, I think the Lakers are going to be the favorites to make the finals out of the West.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. With the Lakers, there's no next year. It's now. They didn't sign LeBron to make the finals next year. They signed LeBron to make the finals now.
I disagree. I disagree.
Well, no, that's what the Lakers is. I mean, the Lakers, if you think about it, when they signed him, there were people who were like, he became the 4th best Laker of all time, like just by signing with the Lakers. That means that there is a pressure in LA, and that's what he wanted. He wanted to sign with LA because if he takes LA to a championship, it will solidify his legacy as one of the best, if not the greatest player that has ever lived. And I think that is what, but at the end of the day, the Lakers didn't like, they're getting all these players, but they're saying they're not trying to get these players to compete next year. They're not getting Rajon Rondo to compete next year. They're getting these guys to compete now. And I think at the end of the day, they have to ask themselves, has the balance of power shifted? The answer is no. But for the Lakers, they want it to be yes.
Well, wait, hold on. I agree with you that they want to make the finals and they're going to try. But your point about LeBron needs to go there, cement his legacy by winning another title. He's not winning a title next year, no matter where he goes. Unless he goes to Golden State, he's not winning a title next year. Or if he could have figured out a way to go to the Celtics, maybe.
Or Houston.
Or Houston, right. But he those weren't going to happen. So he went to a place where he can win a title, not next year, but in future years. Donald, you're right. His legacy is on. He needs to win another title or two. He went someplace where he can do that, and he doesn't have to do it in 2019 for it to be valid, for it to validate him as, alongside Michael and Wilt and Russell and a couple other guys as the greatest of all time.
I think that Donald's point is just that the rumblings in LA will be loud if LeBron doesn't make the finals, even if those expectations aren't fair, given the rest of the state of the league. And that's just a function of being the Lakers and being, one of arguably the most successful franchise in NBA history. So, but we'll see how all that works out. Jason, I wanted to go to you for your parting shot. I know we're running long here today.
Yeah. Sorry. So for my parting shot, we're staying on an NBA theme. I'm going to say something that's pretty obvious, but I looked up some stats and I looked into it a little bit. So what the hell, I'm going to talk about it anyway. Dookie's in the NBA. Duke had a reputation for a long time as a school that did not produce good pros. And let's be honest, the reputation was well-deserved. I mean, Danny Ferry, Bobby Hurley, Christian Laettner had disappointing careers. I know injuries played a huge role in that, but they had disappointing careers. If you're the team that drafted Danny Ferry, Bobby Hurley, Christian Laettner, who arguably were the 3 best Dookies over the late 80s, early 90s, your draft did not go well for you. And immediately after that, Cherokee Parks and Trajan Langdon were lottery picks, who really did very little in the league. Trajan only lasted 3 years. William Avery was picked 1 pick outside the lottery. He basically was a lottery pick. He didn't even last 3 years. Jay Williams had the motorcycle injury. Duke's reputation as a team that didn't produce good pros was well-deserved. That reputation is now ancient history, my friends. Last season, there were 19 different Duke players who played in a regular season NBA game. And that doesn't count Emile Jefferson, who was on the Timberwolves roster for several weeks and didn't play, or Seth Curry and Harry Giles, who were both on rosters getting paid but couldn't play because of injury. Only Kentucky had more players in the league last year than Duke. And Kentucky, we're coming for you because we're adding at least 4 more guys this year, 3 first-rounders plus Gary Trent. And Trevon, as we mentioned, is on a 2-way deal. He's got a chance to play in the league as well. And it's not like we got a lot of guys who are about to retire. J.J. Redick is still going strong. Luol Deng has 2 more years of a big money contract. You know, Josh McRoberts, Jalil Okafor, Marshall Plumlee, those guys are looking for teams at this point. But for the most part, Duke is doing nothing but adding new guys every year. So next year, at a bare minimum next year, there will be 15 of the 30 teams in the league. Half the league will have a Duke player on their roster. And if you root for the Celtics, the Bulls, the Lakers, the Kings, or the Trailblazers, you will have at least 2 Dukies on your team. A lot of these teams are being built around Duke players. And this is the point I wanted to make here. I think it is good for Duke and our combating of the hate. We talk a lot about how everyone hates Duke. It's good for Duke that we have guys succeeding in the NBA because I think that combats the hate a little bit. Think about this. If you're a Celtic fan, if you're a Bulls fan, if you're a Kings fan, how much can you hate Duke when we're the team that gave you Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum? We're the team that gave you Wendell Carter and Jabari Parker. We're the team that gave you Harry Giles and Marvin Bagley. You can't hate Duke that much if your team, if you're the team you love, is built around a couple Duke guys. And that's the case in Boston, Chicago, and Sacramento. And it's the case, with many other teams around the league. So
Jason,
I just wanted to point that out. Yeah.
Can you say that louder for the people in the back? Because I don't think they heard you. Tell them what time it is.
It's Duke time, baby.
Hey, and for my hometown squad, the Washington Wizards, they picked up Austin Rivers. I believe it's their first Duke player since the end of Christian Laettner's career, like in the early 2000s. So even teams that traditionally don't pick up Duke guys, they're starting to catch on. So I'm all for it, Jason. I love that we've got alumni sprinkled throughout the league, and I look forward to watching them all succeed. I'm going to finish up this week. I'm going to talk about a guy that you just briefly mentioned in your litany of sort of Duke NBA draft busts or NBA failures from Duke, and that's Jason Williams, who of course had his horrible motorcycle accident. He did an interview this week on Bill Simmons' podcast, and we know that Bill Simmons is probably not the biggest Duke fan in the world, and he got to ribbing J. Will a little bit in the interview, but I encourage everybody to go listen to it, even if you're a Bill Simmons hater. I thought that Jason Williams was really articulate, really interesting. I think that a few years ago when he got into being on television and being a commentator, it was not easy for him at first. He was covering a lot of like high school and lower college competition. He did some McDonald's All-American games, stuff like that. He's now risen up and become one of ESPN's most prominent college basketball commentators and analysts and color guys. I think it's been a really great transformation for him, and he's really carved his way in that sports media world. And this interview sort of touched on a lot of different topics related to his career and playing at Duke. And Bill Simmons was trying to get him to admit that playing at Duke and being one of the guys is like being in a cult. And they had sort of a funny back and forth about that. But ultimately, Jay Will had some cool stuff to say about Coach K and the way that he runs the program. So if you get a chance after you're finished with this episode, of course, and whatever future episodes of our show that we put out, I recommend checking out that interview that Jason Williams did with Bill Simmons. So
by the way, future episodes, Sam,
yeah,
you got to tease it once again. Future episodes. That's a
future episode. We've got. Like I said, the next episode we put out is going to have another great interview on it. So look forward to that. Another Blue Devil that I think a lot of folks really liked. So you'll see that coming soon. I don't know exactly when we're going to finish that episode up. Hopefully in preparation for the Canada games. But we won't commit to anything here. We have some cool stuff coming down the pipe here at Duke Basketball Report. So that'll be it for this week. It was a jam-packed episode. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Jason and Donald, for joining me as usual. And from Durham, so long for the first time, but the first of many, I'm Sam Klein. For Jason Evans and Donald Wine, this has been Duke Basketball Report Podcast, episode 121, Duke Band. take us home.